Well, February the 10th, and we have our impeachment trial kicked off finally. So I guess I'd jump into that subject a little bit. I guess the Trump team, particularly his opening lawyer, Castor, apparently got kind of a bad review for his somewhat rambling opening where he was trying to basically make friends with the senators or something. It's hard to know what was going on with that. The other guy, Sean, I think his name is. Anyway, I think he did a much better job. And of course, the Democrats did their typical emotional appeal with a lot of deception in it, and perhaps some constitutional logic. Anyway, by the way, if you like these videos, remember to subscribe and click the bell and forward to other people, and we can maybe build this site up a little bit more. I'm going on with this. But my general thinking is, I still find that it's like, why do we waste a whole day discussing something that was already known what the decision was going to be anyhow? I mean, we already knew that there were enough Republicans that were going to vote with every Democrat to say that the trial was going to happen. I mean, Romney was going to do it for sure, right? So every Democrat for sure, right? So you already got your 51 right there. Okay, so but nonetheless, we've now the Senate decided you can go ahead and impeach ex-presidents. I guess ex-anybody's if you want to. Perhaps a better argument on that would have been not a constitutional one, just a practical one. Is this a good idea? I mean, why is the Senate wasting its time on something like this? But nonetheless, we're into it. I think that the Trump defense, I've been personally a little surprised at Trump's incredible silence ever since the January the 6th incident occurred. I mean, while he did make some kind of comment that day, basically to go home, and then the next day he did some kind of a spiel, basically along the lines of, okay, people that broke the law will be prosecuted, and so on and so forth. Perfunctory. But he's made no comment at all about his own reactions to what happened, what he really was intending to accomplish with his speech and his protest, what degree the people that attacked the building did or did not have anything to do with what he did, and so forth. I mean, he's been incredibly quiet the whole time. And obviously, even with the ban from Twitter and Facebook and even Twitch, I had to say that. But I didn't know he was even on Twitch. But anyhow, even with all those bans, the question is, there's still avenues at which he could have had an appearance. I'm sure that until Lou Dobbs was fired, Lou would have certainly had him on his show for probably the whole hour. I'm sure that other people, Hannity and Maria Bartiromo and so forth, would have had him on. If he wanted a little more critical interview, he could have gone on Tucker. I mean, so my point is, plus he could just release his own video. I mean, or something. So the result is we really have kind of a silence on his own part as to what his position is, allowing the Democrats and the media to frame the issue against him. Okay. Not fairly, but they can do it, and they are doing it. For instance, I argue that this whole idea that this was a insurrection is simply invalid. I mean, somebody, a lawyer, other night was Robert Ruler was putting out this idea. Well, if it disrupted the function of government, it's an insurrection. So when a bunch of protesters interrupt the Senate hearing on Kavanaugh, is that an insurrection? It interrupted a function of government, which was to have a hearing on the confirmation of a Supreme Court justice. See, I don't think that just something that disrupts the function of government in itself alone constitutes insurrection. I think it has to also have a purpose. That is to say, was there a coordinated effort to achieve a specific political purpose? And I don't see that there really was. I think there were groups, apparently various militia groups, maybe even a BLM member or two, who knows. Mostly it was the kind of what we normally call right-wing extreme fringe groups, largely the anti-government people, if you want to call them that. That were mainly the instigators of this, and there were probably a bunch of other people that sort of got caught up in crowd psychology once it started. And what was their purpose? I mean, did they even at the outset conceive that they would actually be able to penetrate the security around the Capitol? Did they really conceive it would be that weak and would give away that easily? Or is it simply a coincidence that the security protocols were so bad that the failure to utilize the National Guard personnel who had been activated and were available in the city to secure the Capitol, since they didn't do that, it was sort of an opportunistic thing. Once the barriers gave away and the Capitol Police retreated, they simply followed suit with a helter-skelter with no clear idea of what to do other than try to break into things and confront people. And that seems to me to be more like what really happened here. And I also, so as a defense, I think that the first defense, since the article of impeachment clearly says inspired an insurrection, the basic defense is there was no insurrection, so there was nothing inspired. A little cute, but it does get to the point that what we had was basically a riot, and the riot was probably provoked by a group of extreme people who probably succeeded far beyond their wildest expectations. I mean, there's always the people the day before that planted the pipe bombs at both the Democrat and Republican National Committee sites. It doesn't sound like they were pro-Trump people. I think there's a lot of evidence that maybe the people who were arrested turned out to had not voted the election. I mean, what we really have is a group of people, very much like you'll see at, let's say we have a protest over the death of some African-American individual at the hands of a police officer that's being questioned. You have a peaceful protest of activists of this event, and then the night comes and a bunch of other people come in and start a riot, start looting and burning. Now, I don't think there's an actual coordination between the peaceful protest necessarily and the people committing the violence. It's just that the hoodlum element realizes that the police are distracted at the moment, and it's a great chance to go do whatever they want to do. And the same thing for certain radical groups like BLM and Antifa. But I think that the same thing should be seen here. You had a very large, very peaceful rally protesting the election and the claim of election fraud. True or false doesn't matter here. These people believe it. They were protesting it, okay? And so, and this other group is really not largely connected with them. Now, I'll agree that probably after it was over, maybe some of the other people did get drawn into it. So that's one aspect of defense that needs to be made. Another thing is, since it's pretty clear cut that the law enforcement had a prior knowledge of this and failed to adequately provide security, one asks the question, was this a setup? In other words, with a lack of security, not because anybody was worried about the optics. They actually were kind of wanting something bad to happen so they could use it for the exact purpose it's being used for now. I mean, I think that's something that needs to be thought about a lot. And I suspect there could be some truth to it. It's also possible who on the internet really organized these people. It's very possible that although most of the participants were these anti-government fringe groups, you want to call them that the instigators may have been somebody else who, in some sense, infiltrates that group and puts out ideas and leads them in a certain path. I mean, this same sort of thing happened at Charlottesville, where you had a former Occupy Wall Street activist organized all these groups that converged there. And I wonder, had the person really changed his ideology, or was this just a kind of an attempt to catalyze a false flag scenario, to create trouble? So that's kind of my general thought, is that, and then you get into the specifics, and of course, there really was, nothing in Trump's speech that really suggested you should riot. And certainly, since there was no knowledge that he had any idea this was going to happen. And so essentially, you do have your defense there. And I think as far as a criminal charge, I don't think that can stand up to a fair trial. I'm not sure what would happen in a district court in D.C., but I think once you get to the Supreme Court level, I think it will probably get thrown out, and because it's just not valid. But that's kind of my general attitude on this whole subject, that the real loser in this whole thing was Trump. if you think about it. I mean, he had a plan, it seems to me, to have a group of people contest certain states. And I assume, assuming he's being rational at all, knows he's not going to win that because the Democrats have the majority in the House. There were enough Republicans in the Senate that wouldn't go that way, overwhelmingly, in fact, that the election was not going to be turned over by that as protest. It was simply a chance to air grievances and make points. And it would get a lot of attention where he wasn't getting it before because of network censorship. And of course, that whole thing was completely trash canned by the riot. So in reality, he was as much a victim in this as a lot of other people were, except I guess the people who actually got injured or killed. But even then, I mean, there's injuries and psychological and physical. And as the main House manager pointed out, he was complaining about his psychological injuries and those to his daughter. Well, I think this was an injury to a lot of us, and I think that when you really look at it, this was not anything that any plausible reason that Trump would have wanted to have had happened, and that's the missing thing I think that's missing in the House approach, and I hope that the defense will bring that up. That there was nothing in any of these actions that was going to lead to anything other than the ultimate outcome of Biden becoming president. That was going to happen as of January the 6th. And so I thought that this was supposed to be, it was just a airing of grievances and a presentation of a claim of improper voting in these several states and the way things were handled. And if that was what it was, I don't say anything illegitimate or certainly not insurrectionist about it. On the other hand, there is always the counter argument that could be made that this is a very delicate thing, and Trump was talking about this idea that somehow Pence would not fulfill his duties and would not count the votes from the contested states. And in fact, I don't think he had any role in that. I think that part was pretty clear cut. That was a very fringe idea. What he did do was exactly what he should do when the legitimate challenges were raised. He ordered that the two bodies would move to separate chambers and debate the issue for 2 hours and vote, which was the legal thing to do. And so he didn't do anything against Trump either. He simply carried out his duties. So that's my view on that one. So at any rate, we'll see what happens today. I guess we're going to get treated to more of the House manager's prosecution and propaganda push. And we'll see whether the defense can kind of get itself a little better organized. The excuse that they made about the Castor's presentation was that they thought that the House manager's case was better than they thought it was, and so they just went out and winged it. I mean, perhaps that's not a good idea. That if you have a plan and you don't have a better plan, maybe you just should go through the plan you have and see how it plays out. I think that trying to wing it didn't really improve anything. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up now. And like I said, I'd be interested to see what comments you all have on it. I mean, I know that there's a great division out there. The Trump people are absolutely adamant that he was elected or something. But the point is, whether he was or not by votes, you have to look at the certified results, which represents an official version. And I do admit that I think that we really do need a serious audit of the votes just to restore confidence. The fact that everybody on the Democrat side was pushing back so hard to see if that doesn't happen seems to me to indicate there really is some dirty laundry there that's been covered up. And to that extent, I sympathize totally with the Trump people. But on the other hand, I think at some point you have to have a choice. And without a choice, the choice would have been Nancy Pelosi, the third in line. And that definitely wouldn't have been a good idea. So I'll close for now.